Oh, hello, welcome everyone to Ghosts. My name is Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, and I will be taking a journey with you tonight to better understand what are ghosts. What are ghosts? What are not ghosts? They are something that have, as one person put before the class started, feared and fascinated them and us through all of recorded history. We had ghosts in Shakespeare. We had ghosts in Greek tragedies. Probably if we went back to the hieroglyphics, there's probably a hieroglyphic that has a sheet over its head going, ooh, and they were ghosts. Yet, in actuality, there's not a lot that a lot of people really understand about the nature of what is a ghost and what is not a ghost. And a lot also on what traps it, what traps a soul, what leaves it here, what qualifies for it. How might one of you end up being trapped? Something that I would heartily recommend avoiding. And if you come across a ghost, how to release it. Should you release it? Why would you want to? We'll be covering all of those things tonight. I'd like to start a little bit about my experience with ghosts, because I always think that when you come to a teacher, especially a new teacher, some people here know me, some of you, this is the first time. And I like to kind of march out my credentials, I guess, on why am I talking to you about ghosts. My first experience was with what I would consider an otherworldly, at the time I would have called it a ghost, was at the age of 8. Now, I had already been aware and been spoken to about my psychic abilities since I had been 4. So it was open conversation, so to speak. But at 8, my grandmother came to the end of my bed. She had just died and told me that she was going on, that she was moving on, that she had died, but that I still needed her and she would still be there for me. Now, the first thing is, it didn't surprise me. Didn't scare me. It was okay. My mother came in the next morning, woke me up, said, "Your grandmother died last night." Tears were rolling down her face. I looked at her and said, "Oh, okay, what's for breakfast?" My mother looked at me and thought, he doesn't get it. He doesn't know what death is. He doesn't comprehend it. I remember to this day lying in that bed looking at my mother thinking, Mommy doesn't get it. Grammy hasn't gone anywhere. For me, she hadn't. Now, technically, as we will find out as this class unfolds, my grandmother wasn't a ghost. She was in out-of-body form, passing into the inner life, between lives. But it definitely falls into kind of my first experience with things of not form. I then was living in a house that was haunted. And that ghost made themselves known to me when I was 10, about 10 years old. And I woke up in the middle of the night. My bedroom door was open, as I always slept with my bedroom door open. I looked in the mirror that was across from me, and in it I could see that the hallway outside of my bedroom door was all in flames. And there was somebody walking through the flames. Now, a couple of little things that I'd like to share. First of all, when I was 4 years old, my room had literally caught on fire and burned. So, as a child, this was not even a laughing matter, because I'd already had a room burned down on me once. The second thing was, I saw it and I was frozen. I could not move, I could not scream, I could not do anything. I just watched it. Then in watching it, it faded away. It happened several more times before I started realizing something was going on. And it was shortly after that that I would have this habit of falling asleep in front of this picture window. I grew up on the coast of Maine, and we had this window that looked over on the water, And I'm part cat anyways. So curling up in the afternoons, especially in the winter after school, and falling asleep in the sunlight in front of the window was like my thing. Josephine came and introduced herself to me, kind of made her presence known and let me know that she was there and that I did not have to be afraid of her. Now, my grandmother had talked to me about my psychic abilities when I was 4. I was very aware of them. She's the same grandmother that came to me when I was 8. My mother and stepfather, however, were not quite as touchy-feely about this sort of stuff and didn't really want to hear about it. So my relationship with Josephine that went on actually for the next 18 years, because I moved back in the house as an adult and she was still there waiting for me, okay, was not one that I really talked to. I tried to talk to my parents about it. I tried to talk to my parents about a lot of things. But all of these things, they just kind of did the, you're making it up. Why do you have such a vivid imagination? So I had a very driving force when I was 18 to return back to my hometown, which I was no longer living to, do the research, and prove the things that Josephine had told me or had let me know. What I discovered was there was a house on the house before we were, that the house had burned down. It had burned down in 1812, 1812. It was a long time ago, so I'm pulling it out. And that one of the things was Josephine had burned to death in the house waiting for her fiancé to come back from the War of 1812. And she was still waiting for him. On one level, she was still waiting for him to come back. I actually went, because we still owned the house, we just rented it out, went to a far corner of land that she directed me to, and I dug down until I could find some burnt structure left of the house. Because I knew I wasn't crazy. And I needed to have that verifiable information that what I had lived with as my truth my whole life was true. And that's how I went about it. Shortly after that, I was in college. I had a woman walk up to me and she started a conversation. Her name was Annie. Actually, she went by and Annie looked at me and she said, I know you're into all that stuff. Do you think you could help me? I said, okay. Sure, I think. I don't know. What do you need? Well, my parents died. Annie had returned to college, but she was like in her early 30s. And she said, my parents died. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. No, it was a while ago. It's okay. But I'd inherited this house. And renting this house was how I was able to go back to school because it's supporting me. And the house is haunted. Now, I was raised Catholic, and I don't believe in haunted houses, she proceeds to tell me. But I've had 3 tenants in a matter of 15 months get run out of the house. The last one, I even had signed a lease, and they left in the middle of the night and said I could keep my money, and I could sue them if I wanted to, but they were not staying in that house. And they all told me the same stories, and yet they were months apart between when they lived there. Can you go do something about this? So I got very quiet, and I did what I used to do back then, long before I came into doing this work full time. I got very quiet, and I said, can I do this? Yep, that's what I heard. Because this is, to me, the whole world was based around these 2 questions with my psychic abilities at that time. Can I? And then I'd say, do you want me to do it? Okay. Heard a yes. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll be there Saturday. I'll clear the house. Now, this is a story that we'll finish at the end of the class if we have time. But I wanted to give you a little bit of my history. I am no stranger to ghosts.